the 25th Amendment. That's never been evoked before.
Never been invoked. I mean, it's been around, it came about after the Kennedy assassination. Really, it was proposed by Congress, ratified by the states. And you would almost say that it was born to serve this very purpose right now with this scenario, with Trump having essentially incited his followers to invade the Capitol. It's really aimed at trying to ensure that a president who is deemed unfit to govern or incapacitated, and they're very clear in the wording of this in the section of the amendment, unfit due to physical or mental impairment or illness, or a president who resigns, would step aside and the vice president would step in and take office. It's essentially a removal from office, but a removal in the sense of a sidelining. And in Washington right now, it's not just Adam Kinzinger, the Republican, who's publicly clawing. It's notable because he's a Republican. It's the Democratic members of the House Judiciary Committee who are really pressing for this amendment to be invoked. They say if ever there was a time for it to be invoked, it's now, because yes, there's only 12 days left 13 days left in the Trump presidency, but the country is at great risk from Donald Trump at this point, in their view, especially given what we just saw in the past couple of days. They don't want him to be able to do any more damage to American democracy or its institutions, or even beyond American borders in those 12 days left.
In those 12 days left, let me put it to you, Peter Emerson. Should the 25th Amendment be evoked?
Absolutely. But before we dive into that, let's make it very clear that Adam Kinzinger, who's now being viewed as a patriot because he's a Republican, said just before the election, we're either going to have results or resistance. Obviously, Adam got his resistance, but there was too much blood on it. So he's scrambling, like so many other Republicans, to try to become a patriot at a time when, in fact, they're directly responsible for where we are today. In terms of the 25th Amendment, of course it should be invoked, but it's not going to solve the problem. You have 40 or 50 million people who support Donald Trump, many of whom know how to operate automatic and semi-automatic weapons. This is not ending. This is just the beginning. And Donald Trump told us this was going to happen last summer. In fact, I think you and I even spoke of this. I'm getting emails today from friends and colleagues in Washington saying, how did you know? I didn't pick the Capitol as the place it would happen. I thought it'd be more likely the White House. I'm not prescient. I just listened to what Donald Trump promised that America would experience if he lost the election. He's delivered, actually, for the first time, on truth.
But the balance of power, is it at all shifting within the Republican Party? When you hear that congressman speak up, when you hear that the Arizona senator, Georgia senator withdrawing her objection, right now, is there a change you're witnessing within the Republican Party?
No, I'm seeing a scramble to try to salvage some sense of morality and ethics among a very few Republicans. But as we were speaking earlier, how many was it, 130, 138 representatives in the House, Republicans, wanted to throw out the election results? That is to say that the votes of Americans don't count, that only their philosophy and their support of Trump. These people are all over America. As I said, there are, 70 million people who voted for Trump. I was giving a slight discount because maybe some will awake to the fact that Trump's put this country at risk, not just physically, but in terms of national security. So there's still 40 or 50 million voters. These Congress people aren't going to give up their seats for America. It's an extraordinary demonstration of how vulnerable this democracy is, and how just a few Republicans standing up, whether it's Jeff Flake, who's just as responsible for Donald Trump as Lindsey Graham, or Adam Kinzinger, who's trying to create a sense of patriotism for himself when he said just before the election, as I quoted, resistance. It's all a shell game with them. It's all a shell game. And the danger, despite the mayor, who I have great empathy for because she doesn't control the city of Washington, because as you well know, it's run by the President of the United States. It's run by the federal government. I easily see from what I'm hearing, Trump is going to pardon because federal grounds, those are federal crimes.
But this has been one of the contentions by
there's every indication he will.
This has been one of the contentions by so-called conspiracy theorists, which is Trump leaves office a few days beforehand so he can get a pardon for himself from Michael Pence. You're saying no, he just needs to go.
I'm saying he should go. He's not going to go. And consequently, the last minute desperate attempts by Twitter and Facebook to save themselves from what are multiple state attorney general inquiries, as well as the federal government starting to move on their exemptions of any liability, once again are about as authentic as the Republicans' call for the 25th Amendment. It's all a shell game. It's all self-protection, and the country be damned, unfortunately.
And I'd just like to add to that, alongside the 25th Amendment calls, Francois, and it's important to bear in mind, there's parallel talk of doing it in tandem. That is, invoking the 25th Amendment, sidelining Trump, removing him from his duties and powers alongside impeachment. We've already had an impeachment of Donald Trump. This impeachment, why would it be important? You could see the 25th Amendment would be sort of a practical measure. Get him out of power now so he can't do more damage. The impeachment would be more of sending a shot across the bow, a moral message to the American people, because there's, aside from the removal from office, there's also a disqualification function. And it's interesting because a lot of people have on their minds the fact that Donald Trump perhaps has on the horizon the notion he's entertaining a 2024 bid. So there's also the notion in impeachment you can remove and disqualify him from being able to hold another public office, i.e., in the view of his critics, to do more damage in the future down the road to American democracy. Because we can bet one thing, if we know nothing else, if we can't predict the future, none of us can. We know that his supporters and Donald Trump are going to fight another day. This is an over.